All right, lesson 78. We're going to talk about hyperbolas. You're going to have to be very forgiving with me, as you guys know how good my drawing skills are in the first place, and I had to do this with the mouse, so they're going to be even worse than normal. All right, but before we get into hyperbolas, we need to start with some of the other shapes that we've talked about. X squared plus y squared equals 25. Because we don't have any numbers under the x and the y here, and it's a plus sign here, we know that this is going to be a circle. This circle is going to have a center at 0, 0, and then we're going to go up 5 to we're going to have a radius of 5 here. All right, and once we have those spots in there, then we do the best we can to draw this circle. So here we go. This is going to be rough. Alright, so close enough. You guys see what we need to do there. I'm sure you're laughing at my drawing skills, but you guys should be used to them by now too. Alright, for this next one, we have to, we see that this is set up a little bit differently. We do have a plus sign here, so that means it's going to be some kind of circular shape, but we have these numbers out in front, this 4 and this 8 here, so we need to divide everything here by 16. And when we do that, we end up with the parentheses still stay the same. We're going to have x minus 2 squared plus y minus 4 squared. And the whole point of doing that was to get it set equal to 1. And then what we'll have underneath all of those is we're going to have to divide here by a number. 16 divided by 4 tells us that we would get a 4 here. And 16 divided by 8 tells us that we would have, that's a terrible 2, but that's supposed to be a 2 there. All right, and then what we do from there is we find our center. Center is at 2, 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So our center is there. Then this tells us how much we're going to stretch it in the x direction. So we're going to, remember we take the square root of this, so we're going to stretch at plus or minus 2 here. So right there and there. And then we're going to take the square root of 2 for stretching it in the y direction. So that's about 1.5. So we're looking at something really close to a circle, but it's not going to be exactly that. And I'm sure I'll make it look worse than what it's supposed to anyways. Actually, for me, that's not too bad, all right? But there is your ellipse. So whenever you have an x squared and a y squared with a plus sign in between, we're going to have some kind of closed shape here. When we come to this next page, and we still have this x squared and the y squared, but this time what's going to happen is we have a minus sign in between those. That's going to give us a different shape here. But just like what we could have done with, actually with both of those last two, we need to get it set equal to 1. That's another lovely 6. And then what we would have here is we would have an x squared minus our y squared equals 1. And then underneath is where we would have how much it's going to stretch in both directions here. And here we would just take the 36 divided by 4 to get us a 9 there. And divide this one, 36 divided by 9, to get us a 4 here. All right, 9 and 4. So what that's going to tell us is it's very similar to what happens with the ellipse. First of all, we don't have anything added or subtracted onto our x's in parentheses here, so our center is going to be at the origin. And then what's going to happen is this 9, just like the ellipse, we're going to stretch it plus or minus 3. All right, and then our y, we're going to stretch it up and down 2 here. But then normally for an ellipse, we would draw that ellipse in there. But this time we're going to do it a little bit different because a hyperbola would be where we have two parabolas going in opposite directions. We need to get some ground rules for where this is going to go. All right, so the first thing that I'm going to do here is I am going to draw a box in here based on where those points are at. So we got our box going through there. All right, and then what we need to do is we need to draw a line that goes through the corners of those boxes, or of that box. So something similar to this. I'm off a little bit. Hopefully I can adjust this. But you guys can kind of see what's going on here. All right, there we go, pretty close. And then the same thing going in the opposite direction here. All right, where they should cross is they should cross at the origin. All right, and it goes through each one of the four corners of the box. From there, how we draw in the two parabolas here is which variable is positive. Our x is positive here. That means that we are going to draw a parabola on the x, or about the x-axis, meaning this point that is at the point 3, 0, that's going to be the vertex of one of our parabolas. And what we're going to do is we're going to draw this parabola in here, getting closer and closer and closer to this line, and then that goes on forever. And then over here, we're going to draw a line that gets closer and closer and closer to that line. And there is a really rough parabola, but you guys can kind of see that there. Because what happens with these two lines that cut through here, those are very similar to asymptotes, where they're just going to guide where our parabola goes. We can also go to the other side, and hopefully, well, no, that one isn't nearly as good because I should not have crossed that line. All right, we should just be getting closer and closer and closer to it. That one's at least a little bit better. All right, but there you can see our two parabolas for our hyperbola here. All right, for our other one, 25y squared minus 4x squared equals 100, we're doing the same concept. All right, first thing, we have to get it set equal to 1, so we're going to divide by 100 here. All right, and when we do that, we end up with, we've got a y squared minus x squared equals 1. And then we are dividing by, well, we've got 25 on top, 100 on the bottom. So we're going to take 100 divided by 25 to get our 4 on the bottom here. And then for this one here, we're going to go and take 100 divided by 4 to get a 25 on the bottom here. So, once again, x squared and y squared are by themselves, so it's centered around the origin. And then the y, we're stretching plus or minus 2, so we're up 2 and down 2. Our x, we're stretching square root of 25. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there are our 4 potential vertices. And then we need to draw in our box. All right, and remember the box is just to help you get those asymptotes. All right, so there's 2 lines. There's another one. And our 4th line there. All right, from there, connect the corners. the best you can. And obviously this is going to be a lot easier with pencil and a ruler if you want to go that route. But there's one. And there's the other one. All right, and sometimes what they'll ask you in the homework is to find the actual equations of those two lines. All right, notice that it goes through the origin here. So then we just find the slope up 2 over 5. So this line would be y equals 2/5 x. And then this one is always going to be just the opposite slope. So this one was up 2 over 5. This one's down 2 over 5. So this would be a y equals negative 2/5 x. All right. From there, we have to draw in our parabolas. All right, y squared over 4 is, the y squared is positive, so that means we're going to stretch it along the y-axis, and that means this parabola is super wide. All right, it shouldn't go directly on that line like I showed there, but it should be really close to it. All right, and you guys can kind of see that parabola there. All right, it's coming down. There's one, and there's the other one. All right, and one more that's not centered around this, or at least we don't think it is. All right, first of all, we do have that minus in there, so potentially a parabola. All right, first thing we got to do is we got to subtract the 30 over, so then we've got a negative 30 here. But then what we're going to do is to get rid of that negative 30, we're going to have to end up dividing by negative 30 here. All right, so remember, first we subtracted this 30 over to the other side to get that negative 30, and then we have to divide by negative 30. Well, what happens to our equation then is the stuff in the parentheses stays the same, so x minus 2 squared, and then we have a minus, and then y plus 4 squared equals 1. All right, now what happens here is we're taking 3 and this negative 30, which would give us a negative 10 on the bottom here. All right, so negative 10. And then for the other one, we would have negative 5 divided by negative 30. That would not keep this a negative anymore. This would keep it an actual positive, or that would change it into a positive, which would mean this is not a minus sign anymore, this is now a plus. All right, and it's just because we took this negative 5 divided by negative 30 to get that positive 6. Now, this one's going to be a little bit messier, all right, just because of all the numbers that we have here. So first of all, we got to find the center. We'd be at 2, negative 4, so over 2, down 4. So there's our center. Then our x, we're stretching 10, the square root of 10, which is just over 3. So right about there. And right about there. Then y, we're going to stretch in a square root of 6, which is about 2.5, just short of 2.5. That's not 2.5 though. We're up here. And then down about 2.5. And then we draw in our box. All right, so top line there. Bottom line about there. It's side lengths. Now with this, okay, just draw in a quick, easy box with this, just to make sure. The whole point of this is to make sure you know where your asymptotes go here. All right, and then drawing in the asymptote. All right, pretty close there. and right there. All right, and then what happens here? Which way do we go? Our x is negative here, so we're not going on the x direction. Our y is positive, so we are going in the y direction. So our first vertice is up here at the top. And then, once again, terrible job. But there's half of the parabola, and there's the other half. And then we're down here at the bottom. Oh, and actually wasn't too bad. And of course I wrecked that with the second one. All right, so there is approximately our parabola for that one. All right, do the best you can. That I walked you through the shortcuts for that. Draw in the box. That will help you a lot with this. Any questions? I'll be